Good afternoon. I'd like to call the meeting of the Sacramento Transportation Authority and the Sacramento Abandoned Vehicle Service Authority to order for November 14th. Madam Clerk, please take the roll.
Yes, ma'am. Good afternoon. Directors Carr, Frost, Gatewood.
Here.
Guetta, Hanson, Harris.
Here.
Howell.
Here.
Hume.
Here.
Kennedy.
Here.
Lozano. Middleton.
Here.
Natoli. Chenier. Advis.
Here.
Suen.
Here.
And Peters.
Here.
Thank you. You have a quorum.
Thank you. Would everybody stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
That was the worst, people.
I couldn't slow them down over here. We're off and running.
Those days. We knew you were in charge, Susan.
Yeah. Okay. Want to read the statement?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, thank you.
This meeting of the Sacramento Transportation Authority is cablecast live on Metro Cable 14, the local government affairs channel on the Comcast, Consolidated Communications, and the AT&T-Uverse cable systems. The meeting is closed captioned and webcast at www.sacmetrocable.tv. Today's meeting will replay on Sunday, November 17th at 2 p.m. and again on Monday, November 18th at 2 p.m. on Channel 14. Members of the audience wishing to address the board may sign up at the desk located in the back of the room and bring the speaker cards to the clerk. Please speak into the microphone when addressing the board and state your name for the record.
Okay, thank you. Renee, are we voting on the screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, all right. Call your first item then.
So your first item of comments from the public regarding matters not on the posted agenda.
I don't have any speaker requests for off-agenda items. Anybody? Okay, let's go to our next item.
Your next item is your executive director's report.
Okay, Mr. Hom.
Good afternoon. It is now official. We had expected it, but it is now confirmed. STA's credit rating has been reaffirmed by both Fitch and S&P at AA+. Nice. AA+ is the second highest rating a debt issuer can receive, and the STA has a stable outlook. We have strong financial backing and strong cash reserves, so that's confirming good news for us. After finishing up the first full performance audit of the Measure A program, the Independent Taxpayer Oversight Committee is now hard at work on our annual financial audit. And so that's currently underway. The ITOC will likely present the comprehensive annual financial report for fiscal year 18-19 at your first meeting in 2020. There's still no news regarding the Federal Aviation Administration's fuel tax policy change, but the directors of the various self-help counties are meeting with the California Department of Finance next week to chart a path forward on this issue. I estimate that the impact of the policy change for Sacramento County is at a minimum of $1.5 million, and mainly in road maintenance funds. So this is a very important issue for us, and I'll continue to follow that. Last month, I reported that SB 277, which would have increased how much STA would receive by formula from SB 1's local partnership program, was nearly unanimously passed by the legislature and given to the governor for his signature. Unfortunately, just 3 days after our last meeting, the governor vetoed SB 277, which puts the distribution split back in the hands of the California Transportation Commission. Indications are that the CTC is not likely to change the distribution split. What that means is that if it would have passed, Sacramento County would have the share that STA would have received for distribution within Sacramento County would have gone up from $7 million a year to close to $12 million a year. But like I said, that did not pass. And so it's back in the hands of the CTC. And until the CTC makes a determination, it's almost impossible for us to move forward on our next round of applications, which are due in May of 2020. Finally, I'd like to commend our partners on the progress of their Measure A projects and programs. The Capital Southeast Connector Authority has already spent over half of their mitigation allocation. purchasing properties and habitat and wetlands for the Consumnes River Open Space Preserve. Caltrans has really started rolling out their I-5 carpool and bus lanes projects. They started work on three bridge overcrossings on sound walls between Pocket and Freeport Boulevard, and pavement, just various stretches throughout I-5. And Sacramento Regional Transit recently launched the Rancho Cordova and the South Sacramento Farm to Future Smart Ride services. So this brings us the total number of Measure A funded microtransit projects in our neighborhood shuttle program to 4. And there's still another 6 that RT will be launching within the next year or so. So good job by everyone, and I'll conclude my report on that note. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Hom? Okay, no. Next item, please.
Your next item are your consent matters, items 3 through 6 for your approval.
Anyone have anything they want to comment on consent about?
I'll move consent.
Second.
Seeing no others, please vote.
Sorry. Hold on. Sorry. Unanimous vote with those members present.
Okay, I'm sorry, I just got a request on item 5 from Dale Page. We just passed consent, so I don't know if you still wish to speak. It came in after we voted.
You consider Measure A, that's what I thought.
So number 7?
Sorry.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay.
Your next item is your Measure A Transportation Expenditure Plan Development.
Okay, before we start this, I have a few comments I want to make. I see there are quite a few people here who want to speak. I want to address the process that we followed in exploring the 2020 Transportation Sales Tax Initiative and coming up with a draft expenditure measure. Our consulting team has held over 100 meetings with community groups, transportation environmental advocates, cities, and regional agencies. That includes the groups that are here today. The consultant's job is to listen and to include all views in the process. As you can see from the survey research, there's been quite a lot of work talking and listening to voters to determine the transportation projects and programs that are most important to them. The goal is to create an expenditure plan that works for everyone. And there's plenty of time to be sure we do this right. At the December board meeting, a proposed expenditure plan will be presented that the board can review, and this will be followed by a 30-day comment period. And at the January 2020 board meeting, a decision will be made as whether to move forward. Just wanted you to all to know that before, so you can think about that while we're having our presentation. And the first speaker, I believe, is David Townsend. I don't know where, there he is.
Madam Chair.
I'm sorry, just Ms. Kennedy.
So thank you for the opening statement. So to be clear then, we are not here today to formulate and talk about an expenditure plan.
Correct.
Thank you.
That'll be presented at a later meeting.
Thank you.
Mr. Townsend.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This presentation today, as requested by the board and staff, will be the presentation of the poll. We have Lucia Dupulpa from FM3, who is our pollster. They've done a tremendous amount of polling well, everywhere, but in Sacramento over the years. I've worked with them on many polls. They're very good. And so she will, present the poll. After that, Bob Magnuson on our team is going to talk for a few minutes about the decennial report, which is the analysis of the last 10 years, or the first 10 years, I guess, of the current Measure A. So we'll be able to talk about that for a little bit. And then the third person, Noah Painter, who's leading our outreach effort, will make a few comments regarding outreach. So any questions before we start?
I don't see anyone. And just pointing out again, this is a receive and file.
Okay.
Who's your next speaker then?
Okay, so Lucia.
Great. Thanks, David. Hi, everyone. So let's see if technology is in our favor
They're
today.
pulling it up in the back. He went to...
Sorry.
Renee?
Just a second. Just there.
Oh, there we go. Technology is great when it works. So as David mentioned, I am with FM3 Research, a polling firm based out of Oakland and LA. I'm a senior researcher on our team, and I'm really happy to be here today to walk you through these survey results. So this survey was conducted in mid-October, and just a quick run through of our methodological approach. So we did the survey online and via telephone with voters likely to cast a ballot in November 2020. We had a base sample of 1,300 voters, and then we did oversamples in individual communities to make sure we were getting accurate data in each of those communities. The data was then weighted back to be geographically representative on the whole. The margin of error on the whole survey is about 2.5%, but then when you get into some of those smaller subsamples, it gets bigger. So just to give you a quick sense of when you're looking at city data, what that looks like. Here you see the various cities and our sample size there and about the approximate margin of error. So it's just helpful to keep in mind when looking through the data. So getting into some of the initial issue questions that we asked. So we asked about a series of different players in local government and transit agencies and the Board of Supervisors. And in general, voters are mixed, and honestly, it's not hugely surprising that about a third are unable to or unwilling to express an opinion. This is very common when it comes to local government, and we've been seeing this throughout the state, just an increasingly kind of mixed view towards things. We then asked a question about a series of problems that could be facing their community. This spans 2 slides. This is the first slide. We asked them to rank these problems in terms of seriousness: an extremely serious problem, very serious, somewhat, or not too serious. By far, homelessness is the most serious problem according to voters. 3 and 5 are saying it's an extremely serious problem. But close behind it, far less intense feeling, but the second ranking problem is traffic congestion, and then cost of housing, government waste, potholes, and more versions of traffic congestion and roads. Those are all kind of those top tier items. So you kind of have homeless far and away and above, and then these items kind of in the middle. And then this is just that problem seriousness continued. So these are the problems that are just like a little bit intense, less intense, and less acute, according to voters. Another question we asked was about their perception of whether traffic congestion was getting better, worse, or staying about the same. 79% told us it was getting worse, and a majority said that was much worse. This was a perception that cut across all of the cities and communities in the county. So here we're going to be introducing the actual sales tax language we tested. So this hypothetical ballot language tested was based on some of the different priorities that we know are potentially being planned for, and then also some previous language that had been tested. So it was kind of our first attempt at seeing what kind of a ballot measure would look like and how voters might receive it. And we did 4 quarter samples, so with different sunsets, and then the 4th one was a continuation of an existing tax in addition to the new tax. As you see here, all of the versions got majority support, but none reached that 2/3 threshold. The closest one right now was that 30-year sunset. In terms of the profile of who was likely to support this, it really was those voters who are most likely to turn out in a likely 2020 election and are also just more amenable to finance measures in general. So it was Democrats and younger voters and women, and kind of that profile who tends to be more favorable to finance measures was also kind of those most favorable of this proposed measure.
You could pause for just a second. I gotta ask Norm, for people in the audience that might be scribbling really fast, is this on our website?
It is.
So
yes.
you can go to the website and pick it up. Okay,
yes, I am talking quite fast, so that's probably the better way to do it. So after we asked voters how they felt about this idea of the measure, we kind of broke out all of the building blocks. So a long list of the ones that were in that first initial paragraph, and then other things that are priorities in the county and things that are being considered. And we asked first for a series of items that are countywide, and then in individual cities, we also asked some questions about priorities that could apply only in their community. So the next few slides go through those countywide priorities, and they're ranked by the percentage of voters who said they were an extremely, very, or somewhat important priority. As you can see, there's a number that are really exceeding that 90% threshold. So repairing damaged roads, making the community eligible for matching funds, and providing individual communities with the resources to repair roads and potholes, and then making affordable and senior and disabled transit available, and then providing safe routes to school for children. All of those were kind of things that consistently both emerged to the top countywide, and then things that in individual communities also stood out.
Okay, pause for a second. Supervisor Frost?
I have a question relating to the countywide priorities that you have in your PowerPoint in comparison to the survey that we were provided in our packet.
Yeah.
In the packet survey on page 5, it lists repairing damaged roads, and it concludes 74% versus the 94%. So in this example, you're saying they feel it's extremely important. 94% would support it. In the survey, it says that 74% would feel it's extremely important or very important. I'm curious to know why you presented it differently in the PowerPoint than on the actual survey.
Yeah, definitely. I think that as an internal tool, we like to look at that extremely very important. It is like a good guidance of what people feel most intensely about, and that's why often we just use that on the top line. But the total importance, we don't want to write off people who say that something is somewhat important, because that's not the same as saying it's not important. So that's why here we kind of presented it collectively. I'm happy as I go through to kind of point out the ones that fell into that more intense feeling.
Okay. So somewhat, would you say that extremely and very and somewhat are likely to vote for, or can you, or are you saying that it's not likely? You're saying it's not likely, that you're saying it's more likely that extremely and very are going to vote for in the survey.
Yeah, but that's not really exactly what this question is measuring. It's more measuring like their support for that one item. So it's hard to say that those people would vote for the whole measure, but those people, if they knew that that item was in it, yes, if you think something's very important, it's a stronger predictor than if something's somewhat important.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course. So then to that point, actually kind of pointing out the ones that are most extremely important and have that biggest dark blue bar, it is providing safe routes to school, the senior and affordable transit, and repairing damaged roads first. So those were the ones with the most intensity. And then overall, considering the margin of error, these are all pretty comparable on this page. And then this continues. So again, overall ranking, it's starting to go down a little bit towards the bottom of the slide, but you see that improving air quality in Sacramento County has about a third of voters saying that's extremely important to them. So that's another one that has a lot of intensity. But overall, 90% of voters saying that in some capacity are reducing freeway bottlenecks, improving road safety, and providing critical funding to repair county bridges and overpasses. All those things are in general seen as important. Continuing down the list, and as you notice here, we have one item that's got a little bit of a bigger dark blue bar, but here it's starting to kind of weaken a little bit, that intense feeling on these items. But overall, still high values of overall importance for a different phrasing of making the county eligible for matching funds, improving accessibility. So what we did a lot in the survey too, which is a very common tool, is to split sample different ways of wording things to see which ones are more effective. So for example, improving accessibility by reducing fares for disabled and seniors was slightly less compelling than the alternative of improving affordable transit for seniors and disabled. So. And then continuing down the list here, as you notice, that dark blue bar is getting quite less intense, but overall still positive feeling towards providing matching funds for communities to expand their transit system, constructing HOV and bus lanes, increasing street lighting, and building an expressway connecting I-5, Highway 99, and Highway 16. And then this is the last slide of the long list of countywide priorities that we tested, but we did really want to be thorough and make sure we were testing all of the possible items. And as you notice, like here overall, you have 2/3 or more saying that these are important in general, but you have more and more voters saying that these are not important, and fewer saying they're extremely important, and those come to kind of more specific items like replacing 400 buses and upgrading and repairing the American River Parkway. So kind of looking through the crosstabs, we kind of pulled out some of the items that jumped out by the different cities where we felt we had enough sample to make a kind of a call on which projects were standing out. Overall, as you notice here, there was quite some consistency in which projects resonated in each community, and they also tended to parallel what stood out across the county. So then, as I mentioned earlier, we asked in a bunch of the communities specific questions about their community, and this was only asked in their city. So for example, in Citrus Heights, as you'll notice, improving city streets was really something that resonated. 40% said it was extremely important, 94% assigned importance overall, whereas other improvements were also seen favorably, but they lacked that same intensity, so making biking and pedestrian improvements, and then providing express bus service. In Elk Grove, extending light rail really stood out, and that was kind of the top one in that community, but also constructing a new 4-lane expressway was seen overall as important, but kind of less intense support there, and similarly with constructing a new interchange. In Folsom, you have 2 and 3 saying widening White Rock Road is overall important, but about 39% saying it's extremely or very, so less intensity in Folsom, maybe about their local projects. And then in Galt, we only asked one question about constructing the new interchange on Highway 99. 64% said it was important, about half said it was extremely or very important. In Rancho Cordova, the top one was improvements to Sunrise Boulevard and to Matherfield Road. Again, similarly here, you have majorities saying that all of these projects are important, but you can see a difference in the ones that are kind of resonating a little bit more strongly locally. And then getting into the city itself. So improving safety along the American River Parkway was one that stood out, as did just improving and repairing the American River Parkway in general. Those were kind of the two that jumped to the top. And this is the list continued. So as you see here, all of the programs really got kind of majority overall importance in the city, but there is like a delineation where there were 2/3 or more saying they were important, and that intensity coming down a little bit in the city. And then this continues, and these were kind of items that got majority support, and then there's a couple at the bottom specifically related to trails that generally just didn't resonate quite as strongly with the broader city voter population. And then getting into unincorporated areas. In unincorporated areas, resurfacing and repairing potholes really stood out strongly. You have nearly 100% saying it's important, and 44% saying it's extremely important, so that one really resonated. But in general, fixing and improving major streets in the unincorporated areas was very important, as was increasing safety. And the list continues here, improving sidewalks. Also very important, also important overall, but a little bit weaker on that intensity scale. Actually, before I jump into the next section, I think I just want to take a moment and pause to digest all of those slides. The reason we do that is that then when we have a moment to step back, and if there is a possibility to move forward with the measure, and we know what our communities value, and we know what stands out and what is most important to people. So breaking it down to that level, even though it seems like an extremely long exercise and a long list, really helps to hear what people need and feel their community wants. So the next question was a similar ranking scale of extremely, very, somewhat, or not important, but it was specifically around the accountability measure. So what are the accountability provisions that are most important to voters? And just the most simple and important one, just requiring that funds be used as promised in the measure, it was far and away the most and understandably the most important. So you have nearly 2/3 saying that's extremely important, 96% saying it's important, followed closely by kind of the more specific items of independent audits and oversight, and requiring that only 1% go to administration. So in general, that broader promise was very appealing, but then also those specifics were really important to voters. And then we also asked specifically about the Capital Connector program and about what aspects of that were most appealing. And as you see here, this was one where we did that split sample exercise to see if phrasing it as traffic congestion or commute times made a difference in how people understood the problem. It didn't. Both of those were very important to voters, and a majority of voters said they were extremely or very important. And then this is those priorities continued. So overall, a majority saying improving intersections is extremely or very important, and then similarly providing a safe evacuation route. As with the overall priorities, the trails kind of fell a little bit more to the bottom. So after giving voters all this information, and we then re-asked them about their attitudes towards the measure. And as you can see, it increased, and it grew to 65% for the 30-year sunset, 62% for the 40-year, 63% for the no sunset, and 63% for continuing existing tasks. So when you consider the margin of error on each of those splits, that's actually within the margin of error of 2/3 on each of those.
Could you pause for a second, please?
Yep. Oops.
Supervisor Frost?
Okay. So I was looking at the PowerPoint, and on the survey, the numbers, again, don't compare in the same way. If you look at page 14, I'm comparing page 14 of the survey to this PowerPoint, and it's basically saying, so on the 30-year sunset, after information, 65% would support. But in the survey on page 11, it says 56% would support. And I'm not sure why there's a difference there.
Yeah, I'm happy to clarify that. So these are the numbers after they hear positive information, after hear the projects and just like the positive information. The final numbers, those lower ones that are just majority, are after they heard a criticism. There's a lot of reasons why we test that. We want to do a sensitivity testing when we are learning more about how voters feel about this and the viability of a measure. And we want to know if negative talk in the community has an impact. So I think that is an important consideration to keep in mind. But it also is one that assumes that there is going to be funded public conversation in the negative. So that's for the campaign team really to assess that level of risk, but we wanted to provide that data modeling that exchange.
Okay, so I guess the question, so what you're basically, the difference between what's presented on this slide is this is after positive, but in the survey, it went through a series of questions, and it would ask them the question, then it would give them positive information, the positive things that would happen if we do this measure, and how do you feel about it now? And then there were about 7 or 9 questions in the positive, and there was 1 question in the negative, and then after the negative question, how do you feel about it now? And there was a significant difference between that. After 1 negative question, it dropped to 56% from 65%, and actually on all the others, like the 40-year sunset, it went from 62 down to 53. On the no sunset, it went from 63 down to 52. On the continuing the existing tax, it went from 63 down to 60. So 1 negative question had a huge impact, which kind of surprised me. And so the question I have is why we are presented just the positive when we know if something like this goes to the ballot, there's going to be ballot statements that state both positive and negative on both sides of just, I mean, let's face it, everybody reads their ballot statement. If they do nothing else, they do usually do that. And so I'm just just wanted to point out, I feel like that's important information. I was just curious to know why we're not looking closer at that.
Let me respond to that, Supervisor. When you do a poll, it is as if every voter in the poll representing the county has received all of the information equally. We know that, this is my 19th one, in doing these, we know that in fact that's not the case, and so it's a false negative to assume that all the voters will see the negative. You're right, they'll see it in the ballot the ballot statement and the arguments, but that's about it. And that's a very small part of any campaign. So what we do is we ask it because we want to know which negative arguments are the most impactful. But in the reality of a campaign, most of those messages will never get out to anybody in comparison to what happens with the positive messages. So that's why we do it that way, is that
But there was only one negative question, so how are you comparing which negative would impact the most? I'm just curious.
Well, in previous stuff, prior to doing this poll, in terms of talking to folks, they're always the negatives are always the same, frankly. And in every county that I've done these, they're usually the same. And so, but what we don't want to do is we don't want to give a false positive, and we don't want to give a false negative. And so, weighting the positive and the negative as if it's the same in terms of the voters, it would be a major false negative, because again, it's all about the volume and the amplification and the outreach of a campaign, and so that's why we do it that way.
Okay,
if somebody spends $3 million and does the no stuff, we lose.
I'm just saying we're going to decide what will go into a measure that would be likely to pass, and so in your survey you did a really good job showing us the difference between an informed and someone who responded after positive input, which was, I think, significant. And I was that's the only reason I bring it up.
It's a very good question, but that's why we do it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Director Suen?
Thank you, Chair. Appreciate your work in all this. I think I'm going to come at it a different way, and I can speculate, but I don't have a whole lot of experience with polls, so I was wondering, you put forth the information about value, about priorities, about checks and balances, and after hearing all of that, after the information results don't appear to change much. And I was just wondering, in your experience, what would you equate that to from these results?
Yeah, I think what these results really tell us is that there is an opening, but we do have to give people a lot of information, and it's going to take a lot of work to get us to where we need to be.
Let me phrase it another way. Once they find out, they acknowledge that there's value in these things, and then the priorities, that they're allowed to list their priorities, and then they hear about the checks and balances are in place that should address the concerns that they would have. It doesn't really move their initial, according to this chart here, it doesn't really move their resultant initial vote, right? Yeah. Is that because they don't value it really, or?
It's because what we're listing to them are things that could happen. We're not telling them this is happening.
Oh, I see.
When we give them the positive messages, we are doing more of that. But the accountability in all the projects, we're not promising that those are in there yet, right? We're just assessing how important they are to people. Again, to your point, I do think that that's why it's so important to do that exercise of knowing what is important to people, so that we start out in a really strong position. Because changing people's opinions is hard.
I see. So you believe that if they thought this was literally in writing, these are the parties that are going to happen, these checks and balances are going to occur, that you think that would go up?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, Director Hume.
Thank you, Chair. I want to follow along on this line of questioning just for a moment, because it is somewhat concerning, and I appreciate your explanation there, and as well as what Mr. Townsend just shared. But it's somewhat concerning that after all of the information of what could be included we saw a 2% bump up. But then by asking one question consisting of 2 paragraphs, one paragraph that said, here's what it could potentially be wrong with the measure, the second paragraph, again, extolling everything that could possibly be done with this measure, so reinforcing that positive then again after you've just told them the negative, you see a 9 percentage point drop. So we only went up by 2% when we told them the good stuff, or at least what could be the good stuff, and we went down by 9 when we just put just barely an inkling, a whisper of negativity out there, and then tried to come back with all of the good possibilities. And let me ask you again, you dropped 9 points.
Yeah, I mean, it is a real vulnerability. If there were, as David said, enough money for everyone to hear that negative message, we would be in trouble. I do want to just address one thing, which is like rehearing that initial explanation. You have to think of that until we really identify what are the key projects in the measure that people are resonating with people. That initial explanation is kind of neutral, right? That's not meant to re-sway them after they hear the negative. It's just supposed to re-describe the package to be. So I think that's a way of just to make sure that it's not perceived as like negative and then positive. That message is just negative. Yeah, I mean, I think that that's why fundamentally, as I just said, I think that at the end of the day, it's going to take really strengthening that measure, making sure people know the projects they care about are part of it, and getting that initial support as high as possible, and then getting reminding people. Because, yeah, if there is a broad blast anti-tax message out there, it could be a real vulnerability.
Anyone else? Thank you. Go ahead.
So the next few slides, I kind of, in this conversation that we've had, have kind of covered it, but I'll run through them really quickly to put a bow on everything. So voters are very concerned about traffic. Homelessness is the #1 problem in the county, but traffic is right after that, and they say it's getting worse. And a majority are saying that they are willing to support this measure, but we are falling short of that 2/3 initially, and as we've discussed, kind of breaking out both those individual projects that are most important and then those fiscal accountability pieces that will reassure voters is really important to making sure that those are part of a package should we proceed. And then overall, voters don't fluctuate after hearing positive messages super greatly, which is why it's so important. It's not to say that the messages don't resonate. We see that a lot. In fact, there were key messages that really stood out, particularly pertaining to accountability and traffic reduction, which is the biggest problem. But it's, I think, a matter of just putting a fine point on those projects and the impact to their daily life. And fundamentally, as we have been discussing, it's just going to take refining this measure, a concerted effort, and strong campaign to help this succeed at the ballot.
I have a question, Director Miller?
Or not.
Oh. Sorry about that. How about that? That would be Director Harris. I wonder why you're wiggling your eyebrows at me.
There's lots of explanations for that, Susan. You know what these results tell me is that it's easier to sow seeds of doubt than it is to sow seeds of hope, and it takes a lot more education to get people into the positive than the energy it takes to move them to the negative. I think that that's just human nature. In a 2/3 tax measure, even under the best of circumstances, on any ballot measure, reaching 2/3 is a very high bar. And the fact that we're polling so close to 2/3 with a positive message, to me, is hopeful. You know, I would really like to be able to pass a measure because I think our region really needs this infusion of cash for all the myriad reasons that have been polled. There are a lot of disparate ideas about where the money should be focused, how it should be spent. But I would like to just tell everybody who has a specific message to give to this body that bear in mind that if we don't pass the measure, none of your ideas will come to fruition, and none of the priorities for our region are going to be attainable. So we have to keep that in mind. But again, I think that the information presented here tells us that we've got a real shot at this. And You know, I know that there's the classic debate between fixing roads and doing the fundamentals and supporting transit. We ran up against that with Measure B. You know, we still have that debate. But for everybody who has a specific priority, I again ask you to temper it within the idea of that attaining 2/3 is very hard. And if we don't pass a measure, we're really not going to get very far with any of our priorities.
Thank you. Anyone else? Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. Magnuson?
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the board. Let's see, you didn't leave me instructions, did you?
Renee, do you maybe give him a
just
hand?
push the first.
They're doing it from the back. Let me get it.
We can tell Metro Cable if you'll just tell us what to say. Turn it on. Okay. There we go. Thank you.
And then full screen.
Okay, Metro Cable, can you fix that, please? You're showing us 2 pages. Okay. Well, now I made it go away. Sorry, Bob.
Okay.
There we go. Yay.
All right, very good. All right, thank you. Hello, everybody. Bob Magnuson from the TCT Measure A consulting team. So I'm going to take you through some highlights and a brief summary of the decennial report. But before I do that, let me just give a couple of prefacing remarks. We really wanted to do something that would help explain this to the general public and to show the impact of Measure A. And I think one of the things we found early on is that there's a lot of just unawareness of kind of all the things that had happened around them that were attributable to Measure A, but they weren't really aware of. So that was a big part of what we wanted to accomplish. We also wanted to do it in a way that people could find accessible. It's very, complicated. There's hard for people, I think, to grasp a lot of times. So we put it into kind of an infographic format, if you will, so that people could be able to walk their way through it and not get bogged down too much in report type, approach. Finally, we wanted to give the jurisdictions and all the agencies an opportunity to be involved in it. So this really includes their input in terms of the data from their respective areas and the successes of Measure A and the total impact. So let's see if we can find the right button there. There we go. So we this is 10 years, 2009 to 19. I think what we found is that this is really sound public policy. This is voters going, voting, using the ballot box to express their will, and then public servants and members of citywide, countywide, and the authority really translating this into real benefits in response to the declining state and federal funding. And just to be clear, we're covering these 10 years. We'd love to go back before 2009, before 2004. I think if we have the opportunity, we'll do that, but we were looking at an apples to apples comparison, so we really wanted to be able to talk about a consistent set of numbers and data and impact throughout that 10-year period, and we're able to do that. By the way, these numbers go through June of 2019. I encourage everybody to go to the sacta.org website and read the entire 26-page report. The heart of the report really is the input from all of the cities, county, and agencies, which is not, this is just a very brief summary. We don't really have the space or time to go through each of those, but that's really the guts of this thing. So we got the timeline, 1988, 2004, 2009, when things really took effect. This is something that we really, I think, were able to pull together because of the involvement of all of the jurisdictions. So everybody provided for their area the total impact when you consider matching funding from state and local sources. So a total of $1.476 billion in revenue across those sources, resulting in an impact of $3.54 billion in projects and programs over that 10-year period. So these are things that would not have happened without Measure A. It's a big number. We went through the transportation modes, and I think no big surprises there, how people are getting around. Population has increased 10% during this period. There isn't good data on job impact. I think that's something we'd love to see more of from these projects, but the city of Sacramento does look at this and found in their estimates 2,000 direct and indirect jobs created through transportation projects over this period. How Measure A works, we spent a little bit of time on that for people to understand. I think you guys obviously understand it, but we wanted to explain to folks how the STA board and the authority of the board are comprised, the role of ITOC, and the role of the expenditure plan, and the principles upon which it's based. There are a lot of ways to try to explain where the money goes and where the revenue sources are. And we decided this was the kind of the simplest way to show it as really as a system. And I think when you think of it as a system, it's easier to understand, kind of the, transit, street and road maintenance, buses, carpool lanes, and the kind of integrated nature of all of those elements of the transportation system. There's also the mitigation fees as a far smaller contribution, but we wanted to break that out. So we felt like we were coming up with two pretty straightforward, easy to digest ways to understand the revenue. And then, as I said, the heart of it was really getting everybody to contribute. It was a long process, an iterative process, a lot of back and forth, but I really appreciate the help of all of the public works folks from all the cities and agencies in the county who contributed. And you'll see when you go to the full report, each one of those entities has extensive contribution in terms of their performance and their successes with Measure A. So our conclusion was that it's been successful. There are obviously challenges, particularly going forward. We, I think, are in agreement that we see the need for more funding to be able to make progress, and we've got future priorities that I think everybody agrees on, from road repair and maintenance to more transit ridership and services and so on. But overall, through June 2019, we're looking at total impact of $3.5 billion from Measure A. Any questions?
Anybody signed up to speak? Any questions? No?
Okay.
You get an A. Okay. Thank you.
Go to sacta.org.
Yeah. Noah Painter.
Chair Peters, members of the board, my name is Noah Painter. I'm with KMP Strategies. Our task as part of the TCT consulting team is focused on handling the outreach that we've spent a considerable amount of time on with STA, and then prior to that through a contract with the city and county of Sacramento administered by SACOG, working on outreach there, developing a listening tour. One of the things I wanted to do was just highlight, I'm sure that there was a number of press releases and communications coming out in the last week or so regarding outreach and input from certain agencies and stakeholders that want to participate in the overall outreach process. We've met with many stakeholders. We've had 107 different organizations engage with us through this process. What I do want to pass out is a list that we've prepared, just highlighting some of the dates from organizations that we've met with that may have said or represented that they didn't have some input. So I'd like to hand that to the clerk now, and I'm open for questions.
Okay. Do you want to project the list? Maybe a little bigger. Okay.
So this list essentially highlights that we've met with groups that are typically, held a press conference earlier today that you'll hear about, having conversations with them about the overall process of the transportation listening tour, asking them for their transportation priorities, as well as discussing with them the ongoing process and outreach work that we have done. We've continued, numerous communications. So we just want to highlight that has been done. It's continuing to be done. There's another meeting that is scheduled on November 20th that we'll continue to engage with. So we just want to make sure that the board hears that your consulting team is fully engaged in working with all stakeholders in this process.
Thank you. I have a question. We have a question. Director Kennedy?
Mr. Painter, I'm looking at the list, and I just want to point out, not your fault, but just to further make the point that this doesn't even include some of the meetings that I have personally had with these organizations, and I'm sure that there's other board members up here that could say the same thing.
Yeah.
So this was a review that was done based on our calendar and meetings that we had identified and reports that we're working on.
Yeah, I think the point he's making is that many of us have had meetings also.
Yeah,
in addition to the 100+ meetings.
We were remiss in not letting you know.
Fully understand. Thank you.
Any questions? Does that complete your presentation? It does. Okay. Thank you. Mr. Townsend?
Yeah, that completes our presentation in case anybody has any questions or anything. Otherwise,
I don't see any.
Thank you.
Thank you. There could be later. We're going to go to speaker requests. I have around 30 of them. There'll be a 2-minute limit on your comments, and may I suggest you try and think of something different to say than the person before you, so it keeps it more interesting for us. And the first person is Dan Allison, and then Nicholas Wells, and after that, Harold Hammond.
Good afternoon, members. My name is Dan Allison. I have spoken to you before representing organizations, and I want to make clear today I'm not, and specifically I'm not representing the school district that I work for. But the nature of my job working for the school district is that I ask questions of and listen to responses from both students and parents about what their concerns are and their transportation challenges. Students want to go places. It excites them more than anything, and the mythology of they want to sit in front of their screen is really not true. They want to go places, but their parents won't let them go many places because their parents don't think it's safe because of traffic safety, driver behavior, and lack of sidewalks in many places. The students feel the same way about it, and they report the same thing to me. Our existing transportation system does not work for students. They don't want to be in their parents' car. They want to be able to travel independently out of cars with their families, with their friends, and by themselves. And our transportation system doesn't work for them. The polling didn't ask students anything. It was obviously calls to adults. We didn't gather any information from students, and I think we need to. The success of the SAC-RT free ride program is an indication that students want to go places on transit. I take a bus that goes by 2 high schools, and the bus has some days been so crowded I couldn't even get on. It was full of students. That's how much they want to travel on transit, and we're not hearing that when we do polling of adults. The safe routes to school issue is critically important, but students want more than that. They want safe routes to parks, to the store, to their friends and relatives' houses. They want safe routes everywhere. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Nicholas Wells, then Harold Hammond.
Greetings and good afternoon, members of the board. I wanted to talk mostly on my disposition on reallocating funds away from infrastructure and improving our roads over towards public transportation. And I want to talk about job growth. Now, on paper, both of those do seem to create jobs. And I want to talk about the jobs in the building trades and the fact that those are good jobs. Those are well-paying jobs. They're jobs that you can support a family on, you know, afford a mortgage. And that if history has taught us anything about letting infrastructure decay and go to waste, that it can result in the loss of life. And I think that we need to focus more on that because it's a failing infrastructure. And I think you would get a trickle-down effect. You would see traffic, congestion, all of that go down. Because here in Sacramento, our infrastructure's, I can't give you a number, but it's old. And it's jam-packed. I came from the Bay Area, so I'm implanted from there, and our city continues to grow. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Harold Hammond and then Dale Page.
Good afternoon, I'm Harold Hammonds.
Good afternoon.
Okay, I'm from Local 46. I'm actually a carpenter. Just kind of give you some little information about my commute. I'm a single parent. I pick up my daughter from school. I go to work each day, and trying to get her to soccer practice is definitely an impossible feat, but I do it every day. And I think that actually with my job being the good job that I have, which I'm thankful for, it allows me to be able to sometimes have help when I pay people. Okay, so the fact that the infrastructure, if it could be better as far as lanes being opened up and potholes being fixed and things of that nature, it helped me get back and forth to commute faster. Definitely gives me more time with my family and being able to take care of my business more efficiently. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Dale Page and then Kevin, it's either Busen or Busel.
So basically, I've lived in this area for over 40 years, and the quality of life has deteriorated somewhat. Congestion is a lot worse than it used to be. And when I caught in congestion, I'm concerned because I see the fact that we have a transportation system that is dependent on the personal vehicle. And I'm concerned that the greenhouse gas emissions associated with those vehicles sitting there idling and not effectively getting people where they need to go. So I believe that we can have all these things that the folks from the building trades want to have. We just need to start looking at a different way to do it. And there's a difference when you're looking at the survey. You can consider whether you are going to be following the herd or you're going to be leading. There's a truck stopped in front of you on the road, you put your brakes on and you think, need to do something differently. In the context of greenhouse gases producing climatic changes like we've seen with fires and that sort of thing, we need to consider alternatives. I think we need to have transit support, and I believe that these building trade gentlemen will have good jobs supporting those improvements. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Page. Kevin Busel, and then Alice Kimball and Virginia Wenicky. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that.
Kevin Busey, City of Elk Grove. You know, I went through the polling results in great detail, and I think what it shows is the primary things we need to address in the transportation expenditure plan is safety, fix it first, and congestion relief. We need to get those poll the highest. We need to really look at that, and then those other things that we may want, that other people may want regarding transit, obviously, and walking and biking, which are also important, but may not poll as high. We need to make sure that we have a strong emphasis on those ones that do poll high if we want to try to bring those into the measure. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Busel.
Thank you. Alice Kimball, then Virginia Weinecke.
Thanks. Hello, my name is Alice Kimball, and I just wanted to say thanks to the STA. Thanks for your Measure A money, because if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be able to go anywhere on paratransit. I live outside of the ADA, so if it wasn't for Measure A, I wouldn't be able to go anywhere. I do use paratransit to go everywhere, to work, to church, anywhere my heart desires, and anywhere they'll take me. So I want to say thank you for your continued Measure A money so that I'm able to get out and go where I want to go.
Thank
and
you.
I hope you continue that.
Thank you, Ms. Kimball.
Thank you.
Then Virginia Weinecke.
Good afternoon, Chair and Board. My name is Virginia Weinecke. I work for ACC Senior Services, managing the transportation program. I just wanted to inform the Board that ACC rides started with the assistance of paratransit. Way back in 2003, we received a grant from Area Agency on Aging, and we approached paratransit for assistance. Without hesitation, they loaned us one bus, an 8-passenger bus. In 1 month time, we provided 267 one-way rides. After 3 months, paratransit came back to us. We didn't go to them and ask them for another vehicle because they noticed that we have been providing more than 600 rides after the 3 months period. That only says that the transportation for the older community, those who do not have access to public transit or could not access public transit because of their mobility and cognitive impairment is very, very important. So please, the money that is going to be allocated from Measure A, keep in mind those people that we serve, the CBOs that we serve. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Virginia. Stephen Norris, and then Sarah Kerber, and then Rick Soren.
Good afternoon, board members. My name is Stephen Norris. I am the Director of Development for Juma Ventures. We're a nonprofit social enterprise. We're working with 18 to 24-year-olds. They're opportunity youth who are all low income, out of school and work for over 6 months. They've experienced homelessness or unstable housing. And we immediately hire and employ them to work at the Golden One Center, Sutter Health Park, Papa Murphy's Park, and the Toyota Amphitheater. And so we believe in the power of work and the potential of young people. And what they tell us over and over again is that their number one barrier upon entering the program is transportation. And so we've been grateful for our partnership with the team at Paratransit through the Moving Youth to Jobs program. They do great workshops and one-on-one attention. And so we strongly support the measure. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Sarah Kerber, then Rick Sowen, and Helen O'Connell. Sarah?
Sarah had to leave.
Okay, thank you. Rick?
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the authority. Thank you for the opportunity today. My name is Rick Soren. I'm a fifth-generation Sacramentan, lifelong cyclist, and a business owner in this community. I'm also a scientist and the author of university-published materials on climate change. Earlier this month, over 11,000 of my scientist peers signed on to an article expressing alarm that climate change is occurring faster than expected and having more extreme effects than expected. They warned that without significant societal changes, the future will look radically different from the past. What this means for you is that business as usual is not an option. Now, you're here today because you are community leaders and you're faced with a dilemma. On the one hand, as your pollsters have told you, a lot of people in our community don't fully understand the specter of climate change. And what they think is important is more roads, wider roads, new lanes. On the other hand, on some level, you probably realize that such a future cannot possibly happen over the long time frames at which you plan. And bond investments in such a future are misguided. Either we make big changes in the way we move about our community, or the effects of climate change are going to make those changes for us. So please just don't lead us down the path of the future with transportation funding weighted toward inevitably stranded investments. I urge you to show leadership and propose a forward-thinking transportation bond that will help us have a sustainable community. And for that, your children and your grandchildren will thank you.
Thank you. Helen O'Connell. There you are. Renee, I need help. Afternoon, Helen.
Good afternoon, Board. My name is Helen O'Connell, and I represent Disability Organizing Group for Initiating Total Equality. We're an advocacy group, and my main focus is transportation. I think the transportation measure is a good idea, but I feel that most of it's focused on expanding everything and getting new stuff and not supporting what we already have and getting it up to par and making sure that we have strong transportation for areas that don't have transportation right now. And I think the measure should include transportation options that are not necessarily at the top of their list, because we need to support alternatives to cars and support electric buses and trains, and make sure that the trains have large low floor capabilities so that everyone would be able to ride the system and not be set aside because there's not enough room on the train. Thank you very much, and have a good day.
ML Wadwani, and then Shayna Forsman, and then Deanne Osorio.
Good afternoon. My name is Amel Wadwani, and I am before you today as a resident of Sacramento, providing some personal perspective. Until recently, I lived in the Pocket. It's a beautiful place and a wonderful place to raise kids, which is exactly what I was doing while I was there. For those years, I relied entirely on my minivan for transportation because I went from school drop-off to work, to school pickup, to soccer, to music lessons. Transportation by car absolutely made sense for me in that neighborhood and in that life phase. So, like many of us here, I come to these issues from the perspective that this is not about moving everyone out of cars, but about making the investments that will allow choices for those who either need to or want to use other modes of transportation. I wanted to offer 3 personal examples. First, my 80-year-old mother. She does not and really should not drive anymore. The 62 bus is what allows her to come to see me once a week and run some errands. Second, I travel frequently for work. Given the choice, I would absolutely take light rail or an express bus to the airport rather than leave my car in the parking lot there for multiple days. Third, my teenage son. A couple of weeks ago, I got a call from him saying, "Mom, my 5 buddies and I are at DOCO, and we need to get to our friend's house in Curtis Park." What I fully expected to hear next was, "Can you please pick us up and take us there?" Instead, he said, "We are hopping on light rail. Just wanted to let you know." So now that only happened because of the stickers that these students now have on the back of their cards, and it was free and convenient. So let's please make the right investments. Cars are absolutely the logical and right choice for transportation for many lifestyles and life phases in our region.
Could you
But
please
for
wind up
those-
your comments?
Sure. But for those of us who either have to or want to rely on transit and active transportation, given the option, let's continue to make those options both possible and attractive. Thank you.
Shayna Forsman, then Deanne Osorio, and then Russell Henley.
Okay, I'd like to speak on behalf of the business interests that rely on vehicle transit for daily operations. So I help manage a healthcare logistics company, Accurate Courier, which services Sutter Health and Dignity Health, both extensive medical systems in our Sacramento region. Our company uses vehicle transport to move parcels between hospitals, labs, and mailrooms. The increased traffic congestion delays the routine and as-needed movement of hospital equipment and patient specimen, the transfer of which is critical to yield time-sensitive lab results and treatments. Extended road time is costing the logistics and health industries more money to fund courier hours on the road, and is also affecting patient care as a result of an increased delays and road accidents. Please consider the interests of the businesses that rely on road transit daily. Making bigger investments in public transportation will benefit SAC residents and help relieve the traffic congestion affecting critical and sensitive business operations. Thank you.
Thank you, Shayna. Diane Osorio, then Russell Henley. Is Diane here? Okay, thank you. Russell Henley, and then Ralph Proper, and Sue Taranishi.
Good afternoon, Chair Peters, board members. My name is Russell Henley. I've been a Midtown Sacramento resident since 1992. I've been a public transit consumer since the age of 3. I've been a bicycle commuter since 3rd grade, and I'm a member of the Smart Transit Advocacy Organization. You are working on developing a transit expenditure plan that's going to last for 30 plus years. So it's critical for the county's future. And it's also coming at a time of great technological, social, and climate change. So it's essential to get the plan right so that it gets adequate voter support, a point Mr. Harris made very well earlier, and that it serves us well for the long term under what are now very dynamic circumstances. Public transit, active transportation, and safety and improving air quality are vital elements to get the support from the City of Sacramento residents and voters. To get the plan right, you need to make sure that you're providing processes and time to allow for adequate public input on the plan. Other public entities I've worked with have used structures such as workshop formats, design charrettes, and other tools to ensure they're getting adequate public participation and public buy-in for complex plans of this sort, and I recommend that you consider doing similar things. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ralph Proper. And then Sue Taranishi.
Yeah, I'm Ralph Proper. Thanks for taking our comments. I've been asked by the SAC Moves Coalition to comment on the polling, so I'd like to do that. And might mention to start that I retired from the Area Resources Board as a research specialist, and been involved with surveys and speaking to my colleagues about surveys such as these. I've met with David Townsend and Noah Painter a few times to get some ideas of how they might do this and get input. And I'm concerned about whether this is truly a scientific poll. For example, I've spoken to people at Valley Vision who've done environmental polling recently that has involved some scientists to plan them. They do mail polling to see if people are interested and then follow up accordingly. Here, about 70% of the respondents were cell phone, few people now. I mean, this might have been a good way to go in years past, but a lot of people don't answer their cell phones if they don't know who's calling. We don't know what kind of response there would be if it were done in a different way. Another issue is some of these questions have adjectives like, do you want critical funding for this, or important work there, or is improving air quality important? Well, that doesn't have an adjective. That might skew the results also. There are a number of other issues here that incline the people I've spoken to believe that this may not be the most reliable to guide us as we proceed forward. And with that, I'll stop and let others speak further.
Thank you very much. Sue Teranishi. And then it will be Glenn Jackson.
Good afternoon. My name is Sue Teranishi. I'm a longtime City of Sacramento resident, have voted in every election that occurred since I was 16, and also agree that we need more transportation money. I'm part of the Sac Moves Coalition. I've been an active volunteer with Breathe California of Sacramento and the Sacramento Area Bicycle Advocates for many years. I've been a part-time bicycle commuter for 20 years, part-time transit rider, and really hope that you will lead us into a greener future. We know we've been a non-attainment area for too long. We need cleaner air for our public health. We need to have a good bicycle network to encourage more people to get on bicycles. We know that there are a lot of people that are interested in bicycling but are afraid to because of the high volume streets and high speed streets. So we need a safer network for bicyclists so that more people will get on bicycles. Please, as you look at how to do the next expenditure plan, how to encourage people to pay more for our active transportation, that you look at congestion relief can be had by getting more people onto buses and rail and onto bicycles. We don't just need to build more lanes, but we need to encourage people in other ways.
Much.
Thank you.
Glenn Jackson, and then Doug Thompson.
Hi, my name is Glenn Jackson Jr. and the last time I came here was September of last year. That time I asked for money for RT shuttle in the Thomas, and it hasn't happened yet. Since the last time I was here, I've been hit by a car coming home from school, and my friend and classmate Colin has been hit by a car coming home from school. We go to the same school, but live in different parts of the Thomas. I got brought home by the police, but he is in the hospital. I'm here asking for money to make the street safer for kids who are going to and from school. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm glad you're here today. Doug Thompson?
Yes, good afternoon, Chair Peters and members.
And Jeremy Aurora. Mr. Thompson?
I'm Doug Thompson. I'm a lifelong resident of the county. I've been an East Sacramento resident the past 39 years and recently retired after 29 years in state government working on air quality and transportation planning issues. I'm also a new grandfather concerned for the future. Climate change will be part of that future, and local governments will have a lot to say about how good or bad this community exists in that scenario. Several local jurisdictions are acknowledging that we're facing a climate emergency, and it's important that we adopt a plan that considers that. With this measure, you have the opportunity to establish a legacy for our generations that follow, a legacy for healthful and safe mobility, placing emphasis on projects that reduce vehicle miles traveled and directly address the requirements of SB 375. That requires some new ways of thinking, some new ways of reaching out. It's important to bring local citizens who are concerned about these issues directly into the process, into the formulation of this measure. And I hope that you'll please take the time to do that, to work with the local groups to draft the kind of measure that addresses both reduction of greenhouse gases and mobility that serves those who require transit and who depend on transit, mobility that improves public health. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Jeremy Rohr, and then Chris Holm, and then Delphine Cathcart.
Afternoon. My name is Jeremiah Rohr, citizen cyclist for my entire life. We all know that the definition of insanity is to do the same thing and expect different results. So I'm asking that we have to think outside the box and think about new ways of doing things instead of subsidizing more automobile industry. We know that we build more roads, what do we get? More cars. And congestion is a huge problem we have. I mean, GM has never built a public highway. Toyota's never fixed a pothole. Ford has never built a bridge. So we have to understand that building more highways for the automobile industry is not the way to go. We have to reframe the argument a bit to include other forms of transportation. The public wants other forms of transportation besides automobiles. Traffic, light rail, cycling, scooters, things are changing dramatically. Think 5 years ago, we never would have thought of jump bikes and scooters as being a way to get around, but it is now. And this is a long-term thing that you're talking about, and we need to think that you have to build in some flexibility into this program in order to allow for new transportation ideas, new transportation methodologies, because we don't know what is going to be around in 10 years. So I ask that you guys have to be able to think outside the box and not just be thinking of traditional, build more roads, that'll solve the problem, because we know that only creates more congestion. So please, be creative, be imaginative, think about the future and where we really want to go in the next 30 years. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Chris Holm, and then Delphine Cathcart.
Good afternoon, Chair Peters and members of the authority. My name's Chris Holm. I'm with Walk Sacramento. It's getting dangerous out there to walk, as Lynn mentioned earlier. Pedestrian fatalities in the Sacramento region peaked in 2016 and have remained unacceptably high since then. In many areas of the region, both urban and suburban, the roadway design is a significant factor contributing to pedestrian collisions. Vehicle speeds that are incompatible with pedestrian needs and long blocks that make infrequent safe crossing opportunities possible create an environment that places vulnerable users at risk. Children, aging adults, people with disabilities, and everybody else can have a difficult time walking in their neighborhoods or to schools, shopping, and employment centers. We all should have the option to safely walk wherever we live, work, play, shop, and socialize. Walk Sacramento asks you to invest in streets that support and grow active transportation. Invest in streets that are safer for everyone. Invest in transit service and technologies, and invest in existing communities and zero-emission technology. Please take the time to do it right and give us mobility options. Thank you.
Thank you. Delphine Cathcart.
We've got quite a daunting task in front of us. My name is Delphine Cathcart, and I want to speak today about the need for goals and priorities in identifying the projects that we included in the ballot measures that you are working on today. During the past year, Sacramento Transportation Authority conducted public hearings and received testimonies identifying and requesting funding for $12 billion in unmet transportation needs. Yet the authority estimates that only $5 billion will be available in new revenues. The authority will have to make investments choices in order to draft an expenditure plan. $5 billion of projects can be funded, $7 billion will have to be cut. It's critical that the projects that are chosen for funding match the goals and priorities talked about this afternoon by the other witnesses here. As part of that ballot measure development, Sacramento Transportation Authority should identify and publish goals and priorities based on relevant legislation and public input. Once the transportation goals and priorities are established, the specific expenditure plans can be developed. I encourage you to establish the necessary goals and priorities on an urgency basis. Thank you.
Thank you. Rob Carrion, then Lynn Goldsmith, and Jeffrey Tartagia.
Madam Chair, members of the board, I'm Rob Carey. I'm with the operating engineers. Good to see you. Thank you for your time. I just briefly wanted to share a few things here of what we heard from our members and members from the community, and that is the number one concern of the region's roads and freeways is congestion, ease of travel from one side of the county to the next. We encourage you to use that as a focus to when developing an expenditure plan. Consider if these projects help reduce congestion, make our roads safer, reduce traffic and gridlock, and make it easier to move around, and ultimately, are they projects that benefit the county as a whole? We typically do not endorse a plan that doesn't include highway congestion relief, including upgraded and expanded highway interchanges, connector projects, pothole fixes, etc. The expenditure plan that you ultimately adopt has to be balanced between roads and transit, between urban, suburban, and rural, and has to provide all of our communities projects that will help make it easier to get to work, home, and in and around our communities. We're going to reserve full support for when we see an expenditure plan that we are certain meets the needs of the county residents. But we are encouraged by the process so far, and we are eager to be a part of the process going forward. Good to see all. Good to see you all. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Lynn Goldsmith.
Good afternoon. I've rewritten this 3 times while I'm sitting here. I'm Lynn Goldsmith. I'm a resident of CD6 and County District 3. And my professional job was as a transportation planner for LA County Metro in the Regional Transportation Planning Agency in Los Angeles. I commuted to work by train and lived through the experience of the changes it takes in providing transportation options that make it, and it is possible to make it happen, believe it or not. I'm aware of past practices and future climate implications of building for more cars. We can't build out of congestion. But I want to finish by encouraging you to do what many others have to. Prioritize the following, please. Maintenance, infrastructure maintenance, expansion of the train system, providing low-floor cars to accommodate space for bikes and trains, transit trips, and wheelchairs. That means designing the trains specifically for that purpose. Strategically locate bicycle parking hubs in employment centers adjacent to transit. Implement bus regional rapid transit where you can. Express buses to the airports. Shuttle buses around communities. Improved bicycle and pedestrian facilities. And don't forget the educational safety classes for everyone. Finally, I wanted to say people need encouragement to change their ways. I mean, speak faster. So you need to provide programs to do that. But it's essential to do that now. Thank you
very much. Jeffrey Tartagia. Then Glenda Marsh, Steve Cohn, Roger Dickinson. You're all on one sheet here. Jeffrey?
Chairman Peters, board, yes, we definitely need a transportation tax. I hope you guys are looking at the alternative, whether it's a parcel tax or something else to back you up. To my knowledge, in the last 2 years, because in 2016, PPIC, and you know a number of other groups that I participate in the silos, watch and everything else and see, it was 77% that the state was ready to do that. Others passed. We, in 6 months, tried to push this. I remember when coming in here to this board where there only had been 2 or 3 other people, unless it was an item on the agenda. This is something that needs to be happening, is more public outreach. The Sacramento Transportation Board needs to be actively showing that the public has a reason to be here. You have not done that. Right now, I would say if Sue Frost, Don Natoli, and Eric, which are basically kind of, should we say, transportation desert regions, you have the least amount of public transportation. But I think you also have some of the biggest needs. Unless you guys have all signed off on this, a sales tax measure is not going to succeed. This is what 2000 seed, when Sue Frost brought you the voters registration numbers in there, showed you where was it. And that was only when we had 2 opponents. Think now what you're looking to do. There's other answers and other things, but yes, you need it. But have you not done the same thing? If I'd had a comment on the presentation, I would have asked about, you had for Citrus Heights going to Rancho Cordova as a question. You didn't have one for going to Folsom. The same thing from Folsom. Anything else to get to I-80?
Wind up your comments, Mr. Tartagia. Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you. Glenda Marsh. Then Steve Cohn, then Roger Dickinson.
Good afternoon, board. We'd like to, again, share information from Sacramento Metro Advocates for Rail and Transit. We are a broad-based coalition of business, labor, civic leaders, and community organizations. It was established earlier this year by Steve Cohn, Roger Dickinson, Sotiris Kolokotronis, Joanne Fuller, myself, and others. Our organization currently numbers 160. At the City Council on October 29th last month, we were at about 130. So we've really hit a nerve around the interest in supporting investment in mass transit. Over the past 2 months, 34 SMART endorsers met individually with many of the representatives sitting here on the board. We are grateful for your generous sharing of your time and for your discussion with us on shaping the proposed transportation sales tax measure. Our mission is to expand and improve Sacramento's mass transit systems. Our initial task is to help shape the proposed transportation expenditure plan and then advocate for its passage. For example, SMART hosted a stakeholder workshop this week. We heard about cutting-edge 1/2 cent transportation ballot measures in San Mateo, Marin, and Contra Costa counties just since 2018. And one coming up in 2020 in March. We heard examples of innovative policy to provide flexibility, to include transportation performance outcomes to accountability, to specify stakeholder role in adjustment reviews, and link VMT targets, new roads, and how to finance those without impacting funding to mass transit and maintaining the existing infrastructure. We heard, in fact, an example of how roads should be fixed and perform and how to transition to our next generation transportation system here. This is the 2020 ballot measure going on in Contra Costa County.
Could you wind up your comments, please?
We look forward to working with you and seeing your draft plan and assisting as stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you. Steve Cohn?
Madam Chair, would you start the timer, please?
You know me too well. Good afternoon. Actually,
Ruthless, Steve.
I know. Yeah, with friends like these.
You just wasted 4 seconds.
Thanks. Is it just me, though, or did I feel the energy level drop a bit in the chambers after that sobering poll report? And I understand some of the concerns that were raised and questions, but there is some good news, I think, in that poll as well, even though we know, I mean, we knew this is not going to be easy to get 2/3 for anything, let alone for a transportation sales tax measure. The good news, though, is most of the people in our county do agree on what the problems are. There's just a little bit of disagreement on the exact nature of the solutions. And the more you get project specific, the more you start seeing things go up and down on which people like, which they don't. Certainly accountability is a big thing. We saw that. Safety, congestion, all those things that we saw in that poll. The good news here for me, and I think in particular hearing this young man from Natomas talk about the issue of safe routes to school in a very real way. You have a room full of people. It sounds like people disagreeing on this and that, but actually they're all here willing to help you get that measure passed. So you got, and this is just, the tip of the iceberg. I mean, you got a whole community willing to help you, and that's really my message is this coalition that we're building, and it's just starting really with SAC Moves, with SMART, with the business, community labor, environmental, other community groups, seniors. We're here to partner with you and get this thing over the line. So I look forward to working with you on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cohn.
And we did leave 2 documents.
Okay, great. Roger Dickinson.
Good afternoon, Chair Peters and members of the board. Thanks for the opportunity to speak this afternoon. On behalf of SMART, we think there are goals that you need to keep in mind as you frame a measure. The first is any measure needs to increase mobility. It needs to create jobs. It needs to improve social equity, and it needs to protect our environment. And within that framework, we have 6 elements that we think are important for you to keep in mind and to consider as you move forward. The first is take the time to get it right. We appreciate the movement to January of looking at an expenditure plan, but don't be fenced in by an arbitrary timeline. We've got a year, and we got the time to get it right. We won't have another chance for years to come. And that means focusing on those things that are critical. Fix it first. It's overwhelmingly supported in the polling. We know it from what's happened across the state. Fix it first. Public safety. We know that injuries and fatalities from walking, biking, from vehicles are at a level that we simply can't endure. Second, grow the pie. Consider growing the pie. The polling showed, and I have lots of comments on the polling that I'll forego, but one thing I will say is that all those are within the margin of error after positive messages. Ensure, number 3, that we are in a position to leverage state and federal money. We make a mistake and we'll lose to the Bay Area and LA if we don't do that. Fourth, make sure you have flexibility in this, perhaps looking at the expenditure plan after 10 years. Transportation is going to change over the next 30, 40 years. Fifth, ensure that we look at funding for specific categories. And sixth, make sure that we are in alignment with our climate and environmental goals. If we don't do that, then we will stand to lose all the money in any event. I'd love to elaborate on those. My time has expired, and I appreciate that. So we look forward to staying involved in this conversation as you consider moving forward. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Walt Seifert, then David Mogavero, and Julia Randolph.
Good afternoon. I'm Walt Seifert with Sacramento TrailNet. I'm here because of forest fires and drought. I originally got involved in transportation because of fitness, health, and air quality. But the devastating fires over the last 2 years have made it clear that we need to do much more about climate change. We're at a tipping point. Transportation is responsible for 40% of California's greenhouse gases. We urgently need not to just tweak the transportation system, but to transform it. To do so, we shouldn't pursue a balanced approach. We have to fundamentally change a system that's been unbalanced for the last 100 years. The Sacramento and West Sacramento's Mayor's Commission on Climate Change set goals for 30% of all trips to be made by walking and biking by 2030, and another 30% to be made by transit. Even Caltrans has called for doubling walking trips and tripling bike trips. We need to invest accordingly now, especially given how long transportation projects take to plan and build. I want to make a special pitch for bicycle pedestrian bridges over the American and Sacramento rivers. The rivers are huge barriers to short trips, and bridges are big, ponderous projects. I urge you to lead on this issue and not just follow the poll results. You might find that the community will respond to a fact-based appeal centered on climate change, health, and environmental issues. Please do the right thing for our children's sake. Thank you.
Thank you. David Mogavero.
Good afternoon, Chair Peters and board. My friends in the construction industry all know that
Could you address the board, please, Mr. Mogavero?
When you do renovation versus new construction, that the number of jobs per dollar spent on construction is enormously more. So there's not a conflict with some of the folks that are advocating for alternative modes of transportation. Just an example, Citrus Heights has been looking for an opportunity to transform the intersection of Sunrise and Greenback into a town center since their incorporation. This STA project can do that and make it safer for pedestrians and bicyclists and enhance more transit. Those kinds of projects can happen on Florin Road, Marconi, Stockton Boulevard, Fulton, Elk Grove Boulevard, Madison Avenue, Franklin Boulevard, 47th Avenue, and maybe Laguna could use some tweaking as well. Those kind of transformations can eliminate barriers between neighborhoods, places that are safe for pedestrians and kids and bikes, and that bring communities together as opposed to separating them with high velocity arterials. And at the same time, encourage investment on the surrounding areas and increase the economic viability of the transit system on those corridors. We have a large coalition of people congealing around this issue. There's dozens of groups with tens of thousands of members, and all of them have Facebook pages and the like. We have solidarity. We want to transform the future. We want the future of our community to not just be high-speed vehicle means of getting around. Thank you.
Thank you. Julia Randolph. And then Arthur Ketterling and Rick Larkey, I think that's what that is the last speaker sheet I have.
Hi, I'm Julia Randolph, and I'm a Sacramento City resident, and I work for the Coalition for Clean Air. I appreciate the opportunity to speak today. I would like to start out by saying that transportation is the highest source of emissions in California, and Sacramento City has the 5th worst smog in the country, according to the American Lung Association. We need to invest in electrifying transit and fleets and active transportation infrastructure. Adding more freeways and lanes is only shown to increase traffic, vehicle miles traveled, and emissions. I hope that you keep these goals in mind as you try to pass this measure. Thanks.
Thanks very much. Arthur Ketterling.
Thank you, Board. I'm Arthur Ketterling. Now, what I would like to mention, that I'll be short and sweet, that I was just wanting to mention that overall, like with the tax structure and all and everything, with transit, roads, and etc., that it needs to have a good tax structure that where we can get things fixed and going, and that has to do with even our transportation, like on our roads, for instance, not just the roads, but I know from time to time I hear stuff like about our bridges needs to be strengthened up and all, and are weakening, and none they need that work done desperately. I can remember the time that, like when somewhere in San Francisco, like where the whole thing collapsed. And to this day, from what I know, that hasn't even been fixed or touched at all to get that fixed. But what I'm saying is, though, that to please do your work right, and like on the tax structure that we get right now, 1/6 of a cent from transit. That's unheard of. I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ketterling. Rick Larkey, or Larkoway? Rick? Gold Nugget Road in Gold River? Okay, I don't have any more requests to speak. Is there anyone who missed their opportunity? Okay. Does the board have any questions?
Yeah.
Mr. Soon?
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. So I just want to thank everybody for coming out today. In all of your comments, everything that was said today, there's validity in every single one. Whether you're talking about the goals, whether you're advocating for roads, advocating for transit, alternative modes, all of those, all the statements had validity. As usual, we are in a resource-constrained discussion, and as we go forward developing this expenditure plan, I just want to encourage everybody to keep in mind that we can do more with more. So remember that as we continue our conversations. Everybody's going to be advocating for the different things that were said today. But again, I'm piggybacking off of Councilmember Harris's comments as earlier. We can do more with more. Keep that in mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Guerra.
We got our microphones switched here. Just a process question, Madam Chair. So we're coming into the holiday season. We're going to be back here in January, as I understand it. What's the expectation, either through Norm or through other members that have been working on the committee, for where we're going to start with discussions, I guess, in January at this body? I just want to I'm kind of curious, because I say we're going to have, I'm sure, hear from more folks, as we've heard from a lot of folks today, but certainly offline as well. So is there a time frame for how we're going to either work on crafting this, look at time frames for, election cycles or whatever? I'm curious kind of what the process is from here.
Norm, you want to answer that?
I think this would be a good question for our consultant team. David?
Noah? I'm sure you were listening, Noah.
Mr. Natoli, yes. Supervisor Natoli, the original intent of the plan was to hopefully have something adopted by the end of the year, per what Chair Peters explained earlier in this meeting. It looks like the end of January would be the goal of having something done. That does not preclude us from being able to move forward with the measure. And the goal would be to be able to place it on a 2020 November ballot. We can continue to work through this. I think what we've heard from the board is that the board would like to get this right. So, we are committed to working and seeing this through as long as we need to.
So Noah, with that then, so what has the consultant team been tasked with between now and when we come back in January? I mean, obviously you pointed out, but others, obviously the survey results, that's important work product, the outreach and so forth. We've heard from others. other coalitions forming, obviously folks beginning to gel around certain projects or aspects of what might be a delineation of how the funds would be allocated either over a short term, a midterm, long term, whatever the measure would look like. So since it got punted to you, what are your tasks between now and January? Because again, we come in session here for 2 hours, maybe we need to allow a longer period of time, but I guess I'm curious as to what have you been tasked with bringing us next?
What are we doing, right? So essentially what you will see at the next meeting is this is where the rubber meets the road. We will have to develop a draft expenditure plan for everyone to react to. I think the comments that we've heard from the board as well as folks kind of through this process is it likely will be something that not everybody loves, but hopefully not everybody hates. And the goal here is to have, this first iteration. To coincide with that, based on the outreach that we've done thus far and the outreach we will continue to do in the public, we're working with our PAG members to coordinate with each city to start coincided outreach plans and outreach meetings like open houses and town halls to allow for a public process of an expenditure plan as well, so folks in the public have something to react to.
Okay, so just to the chair very quickly here then, so the expectation would be that in January you would be bringing a rough, maybe even a very rough draft, but it would be reflective obviously of what you've heard, the feedback you would continue to get, and then obviously set the table for us then to begin to have the conversations in this public setting, but obviously with interaction with other folks in January.
So a slight correction, I think we might be coming back in December if there is a December meeting, if I stand corrected.
There's a December meeting.
So a December meeting, we would come back with that, is my understanding.
So in 3 weeks?
And then in January, that would be the start of it. That would be the start of the process.
Then a 30-day
and
comment
then a 30-day comment period. And then the goal.
So a month from a couple days ago, you're going to be here before this body with a draft? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Harris, you could just wait for a second. County Council, did you?
I just wanted to mention and remind the board members that I did send out a memorandum about 2 weeks ago that had all of the legal process steps to be taken, and in addition to the negotiation, the discussions about the substance of the expenditure plan, there's a lot of process involved too, so just want to make sure you're all aware of everything that goes into that.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Harris?
Thank you, Chair Peters. I just wanted to make a comment about some of the polling. Obviously, one concern was oversight and accountability, and I think in that regard, we're already doing very well. Under the leadership of Norm Hom and his crew, and the development of the ITALC, this board, the STA board, has created a lot of transparency for the community. I think that the information that we go over and the decisions we make are very transparent, and I think that we probably have already done most of the work in that regard. But I just wanted to put a shout out to Norm Hom, our executive director, and everybody who works for the Transportation Authority, because we've covered a lot of ground in 2 years in this regard.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, I think that ends the conversation on this subject, and we'll move to comments from authority members. Anyone? Okay, meeting's adjourned.